In order, my name is Clarence Dula. I'd like to introduce Gail Brown, Commissioner Gail Brown, and Commissioner Natalie Vowell.
Present.
We would like to start the meeting. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Dula,
Here?
Commissioner Brown,
Present.
Commissioner Vowell. Present.
All right. Are there any questions? Okay. I'd like to start this meeting with the resolution authorizing the approval of an agreement with St. Louis Crime Commission with Mr. Lance Knuckles.
So I'm going to do a sound check here. So if I have anyone on, can you hear me clearly in the audio? If so, could you give me a thumbs up in the gestures to ensure that you can hear me? Mr. Richardson, I'll ask you directly. Can you hear me, Mr. Richardson?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's a little low. It's a little low, but I can hear you. Maybe can we move the speaker a little bit closer to you?
Okay, we're good. Okay, again, sorry for that, just making sure the audio is working correctly for us today. Again, commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present to you resolution 23 LRA-001. As the Director of Real Estate, presenting to you a agreement for authorizing and approving an agreement with St. Louis Regional Crime Commission regarding vacant structures. The resolution is seeking to get this approval to facilitate funding to allow us to assess, stabilize, and demolition of properties that are targeted in high crime areas, more specifically in areas in North City, as an opportunity to not only, one, have crime be reduced, but enhance neighborhood safety. I will not go through the entire resolution. I will say that the previous relationship with the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission has been in the works for us. Previously, we were able to demolish about 10 or 20 properties together with them, where funding was provided through that commission to do so. As we are in the current moment in time of assessing our inventory, more specifically, bringing programs back to this body for adoption, it is a great opportunity to align an allocation of $15 million through state ARPA funds that will be allowed for us to use to, again, demolish properties that are unsafe, but as well as prioritize, I believe, up to 65 properties that we have resources to be able to assist in stabilizing to help our inventory be sold in the market. And so I'm just seeking your support to be able to execute all necessary work to move into the agreement with the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission to secure funds to move this program forward. One quick note to add on is that funds will not be moved directly to SLDC and LRA. Funds are being managed by the Regional Crime Commission, and we will be submitting reimbursement for expenditures as we move forward. So the fiscal liability as far as fund management is with the Regional Crime Commission and not LRA. But let me be important, you understand. So I seek your approval to be able to move this work forward.
Commissioners, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 23 LRA-001 as presented.
Second, but I have some questions.
Questions, discussion.
Anybody else want to?
Any discussion?
Yeah, I had a few questions. And looking through the MOU itself, I guess the Board of Education kind of has some, we just want to make sure that there's some guardrails in place. And I just wanted to seek some clarity on that. So I noticed that there was mention that it's part of a larger plan, and I just want to make sure that that plan references the economic justice plan, and if not, what that plan is and who is responsible for carrying it out. So I don't know if you want to start there or have me keep talking.
Okay, go ahead, I can track it.
Okay, so the other thing is, this is 1,000 total properties, and you mentioned, I think 65 were slated for, potential, stabilization rather than demolition. Did we do stabilizations with the last round as well, with the last round of this MOU, or was it only demolitions?
Okay, I can answer that question.
Okay, and so it says, in this, that it was, in the overview, that it was, based on House Bill 3020, section 20.857, which the thing that's quoted here is removing condemned city-owned vacant properties, and I'm not sure where stabilization comes into that, if that's just something else that wasn't mentioned. I just want to make sure that we're in alignment with that law, if that's where the funding is coming from, especially if we're expecting reimbursement. I want to make sure that that is the purposes we were using these funds for will actually be reimbursed. So I guess I'll stop there and let you go ahead before I get into any more weeds.
No worries. Commissioner, thank you for the question. Those are great questions. And this program was designed, the legislation was pursued by the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission as first legislatively. But the program design that has been submitted to DED for execution was done in collaboration with LRA, SODC, and the Regional Crime Commission. The Economic Justice Action Plan is the backbone of how this program has been structured, identifying and prioritizing our demonstration areas where we would do assessment first and then proceed to the rest of our inventory, as well as that as we move through the process, we would do demolition based upon those criteria. The St. Louis Regional Crime Commission has given authority to SODC to determine the protocols and how things are brought back to them for demolition and or stabilization. And you referenced the 65 potential, that yes, that is up to 65, and we have not determined which 65 that is at this moment in time. That would be part of the assessment process, where we'll assess up to 1,000 parcels within our inventory to determine the condition of the properties. And in previous relationships with the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission, there was no resources put into for stabilization. I think the final question that you raised was around the language in House Bill 3020. The language has been understood both by the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission, DED, SODC, and LRA, as to include the removing of vacancy and that stabilization of parcels meet that criteria. And so we do have the funds within the budget that has been approved by DED to support the stabilization up to 65 properties.
Got it. I just always have to be a little bit concerned when things come from the state dictating how we run things in St. Louis, because St. Louis Public Schools is very governed by, there's a lot of state laws that apply to cities not within a county with a certain population. So when I see that this is coming from the state, I have to wonder really who's behind it, who's managing it, and how much collaboration there is between us. So I'm glad to hear that SLBC and LRA are going to be kind of guiding this process. I do know that our RCC has their own method for people who can recommend demolitions. And I just wanted to know how much of that is going to overlap or align, or we just, are we going to be submitting our list? Because I know that we've got a running list as well. Are we going to be basically working from our list or looking at both?
So the original St. Louis Regional Crime Commission protocol to demolition will not be taken into consideration with this program. This program is specifically designed about an inventory practice that we developed at SODC and LRA, and will be brought to the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission for review before we move forward and do any demolition. So there will be alignment. We will not expend any dollars or execute agreements on demolition prior to making sure we have alignment with the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission.
Okay, And who on their board is representing the community? I know that it says that they're business leaders, you know, the law enforcement community and their regular community members. How are they sourcing the community members, and how are we going to make sure that we have done our due diligence to do community outreach and making sure that these are the best choices? Specifically talking to the neighbors, usually who want their vacant properties torn down, and prioritizing those.
So I can answer that question very directly in two ways. One, I'm not responsible for how the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission selects their committee members. Also within this process, we are doing an assessment that is going to be objective based upon the quality of the inventory, not the recommendation of the person who may feel the parcel has adversely impacted their lives. We will take those things into consideration, but priority will be placed on the assessment of those parcels to ensure that we remove those that are most dangerous to our residents as a priority.
And the total budget is 15 million, or are supplemental funds coming from private donors through RCC?
So the $15 million is resources that are coming from the state, and St. Louis as a city, as well as SLDC, are matching, I believe, up to $21 million to support this program. So there are no private dollars within this program.
Got it. And do we have any SLBC representation on their board as well, or are they just working in collaboration?
In this context, this is a collaborative partnership between the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission and more specifically LRA and the real estate director, myself. We have been in deep discussion about the agreement itself, as well as SLDC and LRA pretty much have designed the program and worked through with them where we're all on the same page on goals and objectives, and made that clear as it relates to that work. Mayor Slay has also communicated very openly and publicly that this is an operational practice of expertise of LRA, and that their function is to ensure that the funds just move in accordance with the program designs that we have given to the ED.
Do we know yet what percentage of the dollars are going, I know there's an analysis that's going to be conducted, but what percentage we are aiming to spend on demolitions and what percentage we're aiming to spend on stabilizations?
Commissioner, great question. The stabilization is a number up to 65.
65 properties.
65 units, 65 properties, yes, ma'am. And I think, do we have the number close by, Laura?
No.
But we can provide you with the number that we've gotten support from DED and the Crime Commission as it relates to the level of stabilization from a dollar amount, and we can provide that very concretely back to this commission.
And do we have those 65 identified yet, or a method of selection for them?
No, ma'am, we have not identified the 65 as I previously stated. They will be selected as a result of the inventory analysis, and those that are in greatest condition and can minimize the amount of stabilization, we will leverage those dollars to support those parcels to get back on the roll versus putting dollars into a structure that may need to be raised.
Got it. I just want to say, I just want to make sure this doesn't turn into some sort of Team 4 2.0. It seems like you're on the right track. I just still have a little bit of concern about, you know, the language in this bill and how many bills are overlapping with SLPS that have done disservice to our particularly north side families and our public school families. So I still have a little bit of hesitation, but I feel like you're probably looking at that as well. I hope that you were coming at it from that angle as well, that we prioritize the city as a whole.
So Commissioner, if you don't mind, I would love to entertain making sure your questions are answered versus you leaving this conversation with uncertainty about your questions. So if there's any questions you might have to dive deeper, I welcome the opportunity to answer them.
I think it might be a good idea to dive deeper because I know that there are some, I'd like to speak to some of my fellow board members who have been around a little longer than I have and just make sure that I am actually representing St. Louis Public Schools properly. So I don't know if you want to postpone this or if you want to.
Actually, Commissioner, it is not my hope to postpone this.
Okay.
Whereas this agreement needs to be signed so that we can begin to execute. but I do want to take the moment now to answer questions. And I'll just offer personal and professional perspective. As we came into this agreement, I have raised probably similar concerns around language, around vacancy and blight. I think you all know that I don't use the term vacancy very often in my vocabulary. But also we had really deep conversations around what is removing vacancy, and the notion that simply removing a structure does not necessarily remove vacancy. And so our notion is, how do we reoccupy our city, which I know our objectives of St. Louis Public Schools are on attracting families back to the city. So it is in that spirit that I'm excited about our negotiation to ensure that language was consistent around the removing vacancy by stabilizing parcels, which I believe are in direct accordance with being able to attract more residents to move back into our great city and to leverage those resources to do so. I would also say we have had conversation around previous initiatives. Hayden's Triangle was a part of the discussion. However, in our moving forward, that there was given confidence that LRA is subject matter expertise could provide the recommendation based upon the inventory that we have and the assessment that's being done. And understanding that an overarching crime statistic has been overlaid on North City that looks very different than the rest of our city. And so we are in accordance in some ways that I'm surprised and excited about for us to be moving in the same direction with this program. But I'll entertain any question you have, Commissioner, to secure your confidence in order for us to move this forward today.
I think that is my whole list. I have some things that I did not ask because I think you answered them. You can proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarity.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any questions? Any additional questions?
Oh, yes. So the 1,000 properties, sorry. I just wanted to make sure that the 1,000 properties that we have on our list as kind of the priorities for the stabilization or demolition, that has gone through our community recommendations or staff recommendations. How do we get that? How do we arrive at that list, I guess, was one of the questions I received.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Great question. I can definitely defer to my colleague, Laura Ginn, to answer that question for you in greater detail. However, that number is representative of the number of parcels within our inventory that still has structures.
Okay.
And so the 1,000 is an estimated number based upon the number of parcels that are either in some status of an option, in a sale, or being designated to Private S, or have a garden lease or something. So the remaining inventory would constitute about 1,000 parcels.
Got it.
And so we haven't prioritized anything. We've just offered up all the parcels that still have structures to be assessed for this program.
Okay. So then the assessment will come from where, and what portion of it will be community engagement? I guess is kind of where I'm getting
I can answer that
confused.
question. So from the assessment perspective, we will be selecting an outside third-party contractor to do the assessment of the structure. So I want to be clear that your desire to talk about community engagement is more in a different approach. This is about the safety and well-being of residents, that I would not put a resident in that position to make that determination, but have a structural engineer to provide us that feedback. As we move forward in the deployment of our programs, community engagement will be a part of that process as we move forward. But as it relates to this specific program, there will not be any community engagement about which parcel will be raised.
Okay. And what will the community engagement look like moving forward? Do we have a plan yet, or is that something being worked on?
Commissioner, that's a whole nother conversation.
Okay, that's it.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, that was it.
Any additional questions? Right. If not, we move forward. I'd like to call for a vote.
Commissioner Dula,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Rob.
Abstain.
Motion carries. Are there any additional questions?
question. Allow them to speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Allow them to speak or read it out loud.
You can just read it out loud.
Okay. It is those 65 buildings, or is it those 65 buildings will be selected in your schools as well, not be given present to those that previously obtained vacant lots, closet? Closes, okay. I look forward how this process will look. Community should be involved. Look to the fire department and their list of vacant buildings they deem unsafe.
That is a great question. I would respond to that question. Parcels that are already on the emergency demo list will more than likely be prioritized if they are owned by LRA. I want to be really clear that these funds are earmarked and designated for LRA-owned parcels and not privately held parcels. And so we will take in consideration those parcels that are already on the emergency demo list to consider them as we move forward. And as it relates to the sale, I think the second part of that question is about the sale of those parcels. There will be a selection process put in place to identify how those parcels would be sold, very similarly to how we work with the Proposition and as program today. Thank you for the question.
Are there any other questions?